So with schools due to close earlier than expected as the third wave of COVID-19 infections takes hold, a study by the Human Sciences Research Council has estimated the effects of school closures on curriculum outcomes. Using proficiency in mathematics, the study is an informed speculation on how test scores have fallen between 2019 and 2020. Now, Dr. Vijay Reddy is a distinguished researcher at the Human Sciences Research Council's Division of Inclusive Economic Development. She joins us now via our video link. Dr. Reddy, it's great to talk to you this morning on what is such an incredibly important topic, especially this week, given that we've now been told that schools will again be closed from tomorrow. You know, this is a big question. How do we quantify what this loss of face-to-face school time has meant for learners?
Good morning, Michelle. And exactly the question, while if you look at the global literature, we know that as a result of the school closures throughout the world, there are learning losses. Secondly, we know clearly that these learning losses will affect the poor and the less resourced households and schools more than the more affluent households. And thirdly, we also know for countries like South Africa with fragile systems, that the gains that we've achieved over the last 20 years, parts of that will be lost. And while knowing that was important, what we set out to do was to try to quantify how much losses. And as you know, we were not able to go to schools in 2020 to collect primary data. So what we did then was to have what we call an informed speculation based on results from other studies. And using the results from Belgium, which did collect primary data, we speculated that at a best case scenario, we know the differences between South Africa and Belgium, but as a best case scenario, our educational system would have slid back to the same levels that it was in 2015 in terms of its outcomes.
Sure. And those levels achieved in 2015, I believe it's in maths proficiency, is around 34%. Is that correct?
That's right. We used the data from the Trends in International Mathematics and Science Study, and that's our only measure of trend over time with robust results. So in 2019, the TIMS study showed us that 41% of our learners have mathematical proficiency.
Yep.
And we must see the proficiency in mathematics as a proxy for the educational outcomes of the whole system. And using the methodology that we did in this analysis, we speculate that by the end of 2020, again, it would have slid from 41% to 34% being mathematical proficient. And that puts us at the same level that we were in 2015. And that's how we speculated 5 years of learning loss.
Yeah. And I mean, the worrying thing about that speculation is that 34% sliding back from 41%, that is, the situation could actually be much worse than that.
Absolutely. This is, as I said, the best case scenario, and it will be much worse, especially for those learners that are attending no-fee schools, where school closures mean that there is very little interaction with schools and with learning materials, as opposed to learners in fee-paying schools, where generally households will have digital resources and teachers do provide an alternative of online learning during the period of school closure.
So, Dr. Reddy, let me ask you this. In terms of the amount of class time that our pupils would have missed out on in the past year of the pandemic, how much in percentage terms would that be?
Well, Martin Gustafsson, an economist at the Department of Basic Education, estimated that in 2020 that there was a loss of around 60% of class time, and this rises, that's the national average, and for learners in no-fee schools, this could rise to about 65%. So that's a lot of loss of school time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, principals also reporting that even though, holidays have been cut short, there has been an attempt to try and claw back that lost class time. So many principals reporting that up to 40% of their curriculums have not been completed for the previous year.
Absolutely. As you know, the Department of Basic Education introduced a streamlined curriculum, a reduced curriculum in 2020 in order to make sure that at least the fundamentals were taught. And even with this reduced curriculum, many principals reported that they were not able to complete this curriculum. So the virus has wreaked the consequences of the virus leading to school closures and many learners not being able to access any alternative learning does have dire consequences for the individuals as well as the country.
Let's talk about those consequences, Dr. Reddy. Last year there was this perception that there'd been such a major impact, and there was, on the matric class of 2020. They were expected to do most of their schoolwork independently or working in groups with a loss of face-to-face class time. That's especially true for no-paying schools. But how much of the impact of the pandemic is really focused on the lower foundation phases? So what is this going to mean for the upcoming, say, grades 1, 2, and 3 in the foundation phase, and how their school-going careers progress?
Well, obviously, the school is seen as an equalizer in our society, as an attempt to try and equalize opportunities for the poor. And for the majority of the learners, they absolutely need that interaction in a classroom with a teacher with expert knowledge. And so the loss of that space with the teacher means a loss of learning. So in this year to date, the loss has been largely due to rotational practices, in that you could not have the whole classroom at the same time. And so for those learners so they had half the curriculum up to now. And the school closures, bringing the holidays earlier to tomorrow, but at the same time keeping it still at the 2 weeks. And we hope that schools will go back as normal on the 19th of July. And the Department of Basic Education had gazetted that primary school learners will come back with full classes in the third term.
Yeah, absolutely.
So at least at the primary school level, we hope that could still be on the cards, and those learners at least get a full days of learning in a classroom.
I mean, that is definitely the hope. But as you say, at the start of the interview, these maths outcomes being a marker for the state of the education system, maths proficiency going from 41% to now a best case scenario of 34%. It's most likely much worse than that. What can we do now? What measures can government put in place? And again, it's particularly for schools in lower income communities to try and really work towards getting the pupils where they need to be.
Well, I think the vaccination campaign for teachers is a massive step in the right direction, in that when teachers feel that their health safeties have been seen to, and coming back in the new term will reduce their anxiety and create more confidence. So that's the first thing. Of course, getting the primary school learners back in the new term means that there's full class learning. But equally, it would be other educational inputs that are important. The home, ensuring that schoolwork is done, trying to ensure, especially for younger kids, that reading happens, to continue to practice reading exercises at home. And I was hoping that the educational media like television, yourselves, and radio, that there would be far more educational programs mounted by the media so that when learners are at school, they could participate and listen to these educational programs, and that could also contribute to their enhanced cognitive functioning.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, as you say, reading so incredibly important. Dr. Vijay Reddy, thank you so much for your time this morning on such an incredibly important discussion, and right on time as well, with schools closing earlier for the winter break. School closures set to begin tomorrow, all public and private schools to be closed by the end of this week. Dr. Vijay Reddy is with the Human Sciences Research Council. Thanks so much indeed.